Let's start with something uncomfortable. They didn't call you back. They didn't try to fix it. They didn't care you were gone. And deep down, you probably replayed every second, every word, every silence, every choice you made. But here's the plot twist no one talks about. Them not valuing you was the gift. Not because it felt good, it didn't, but because it gave you something most people spend their whole lives running from: the truth. When they ignore you, they reveal you. You see, when someone consistently shows you they don't see your worth, believe them. Not because they're right, but because they're useful. They're the mirror, the one that doesn't flatter, the one that doesn't reflect who you hoped you were, but who you've really become in that space. Maybe you tolerated too much. Maybe you hoped too long. Maybe you believed you needed to earn their attention. But here's what Stoicism reminds us. He who does not value himself cannot be valued by others. Epictetus, read that again. If you're starving for their validation, you've already abandoned your own. And when you abandon your self-worth for someone else's approval, you don't get connection. You get dependency, and they can feel it, that hunger, that trying, that pull, and nothing repels someone faster than knowing they have full control over your identity. Stop trying to win people who can't see. Look, not everyone has the eyes to recognize who you are, and that's okay. You were not born to be understood by everyone. You were born to be whole even when misread. You were born to be rooted even when overlooked. Trying to win someone back who couldn't even see you when they had you. That's not love. That's ego dressed as closure. Because here's the reality. If someone has to lose you just to start valuing you, then the version of you they want back no longer exists. Your value doesn't decrease in silence. Let's talk about what happens after you walk away. Silence can be terrifying, especially when you were the one who gave the most. You wonder if they even noticed. You wonder if you made a mistake. You wonder if you should have done more. But here's the truth no one teaches you. Silence is not invisibility. In fact, the louder your absence becomes, the more people realize what your presence really meant. You're not forgotten, you're not erased, you're just no longer available for roles that didn't pay in respect. You never needed them to validate you. Let me say something that might sting. They didn't fail you, they exposed you to yourself, to how much of your identity you tied to their approval, to how many times you bent your boundaries just to stay likable, to how far you were willing to shrink just to be chosen. And now you know better. Now you can rebuild. Now you can become someone whose self-worth is no longer outsourced. The inner shift from approval-seeking to self-respect. Here's the core of Stoic confidence, and the entire point of this phase. You stop needing to be remembered because you have finally remembered yourself. You become someone who doesn't send emotional invoices to people who don't pay in commitment. You stop chasing explanations and start choosing peace. You stop rereading old messages and start rewriting your future. Because what makes someone unforgettable isn't how loud they are, it's how silently they walked away and never looked back. Reflection check-in. Let's do a little audit. Who did you overgive to even when it cost you your peace? Who did you try to impress, fix, or convince, only to be left with silence? And more importantly, what would your life look like if you stopped waiting to be valued and started living like you already are? The real you is not a performance. You don't need to become better to be wanted. You don't need to play it cool pull away, change your voice, or redesign your vibe. You just need to return to your realist self, the version of you before you started auditioning for love. That's the you they'll think about when you're gone. That's the you they couldn't hold because they never earned it. That's the you that doesn't beg for closure because you are the closure. Here's your truth. They didn't value you, and that's not your failure. That's their limitation. You're not too much. You're not hard to love. You're just no longer available for people who confuse presence with possession. The more you value yourself, the more you attract people who don't need to be convinced. So let them go. Let them wonder. Let them scroll. Let them regret it quietly. And you don't need to be obsessed over. You just need to become so self-rooted, so emotionally sovereign, so purpose-driven that even their memory of you feels like a missed opportunity. So now that you've stopped chasing their validation, let's talk about something even more powerful. How to become the kind of person they can't stop thinking about without ever needing them to think about you at all. This is the paradox. The moment you stop trying to be seen is when you become unforgettable. But not because you manipulated anything. You didn't play games. You didn't post for attention. You didn't pretend to move on just to provoke them. You simply became magnetic in your stillness. Stillness isn't emptiness. It's power under control. Stillness doesn't mean you're waiting. It doesn't mean you're bitter or frozen or emotionally blocked. Stillness means you've stopped reacting. You've stopped over-explaining. You've stopped adjusting your worth to match their confusion. You've become a person who doesn't need to make noise to be noticed. Because you radiate clarity, you walk with direction, you speak with intention, and that scares people who only understand chaos. Magnetic presence. It starts inside. Let's break it down. There are 5 core traits that make someone unshakably magnetic, especially after being undervalued. And none of them have to do with proving your worth. They're about embodying it. 1. Authenticity over performance. You don't need to become someone new. You just need to unlearn the performance. The filters, the fake laughter, the emotional editing. When you show up as your actual self, clear, kind, grounded, it's disarming because most people are hiding, but you're present, and presence is rare. Non-reactivity is the new confidence. Nothing is more magnetic than someone who can hear a rumor, receive silence, or face rejection, and still choose peace over panic. You don't react, you process, you respond, if it's even worth it. You don't make decisions to get attention. You make decisions to protect your energy. That kind of self-control, it's haunting. 3. Purpose is sexy. Let's be honest, there is nothing more attractive than someone who knows where they're going, with or without you. You've got goals, a niche, a craft, a project that lights you up when no one's watching. You wake up for something bigger than revenge. That's not pettiness, that's power in motion, because people can sense when you have moved on. Not out of spite, but out of focus. And that focus, that's what stays with them. 4. Clarity in communication is skill, calm authority. You don't ghost, you don't explode, you don't over-explain, you say what you mean what you say, and you leave when it's time, not when it's dramatic. There's nothing chaotic about your presence. That's why it lingers, because most people live in emotional noise. You're a signal. 5. You detach from outcome, and that's unsettling. They expected you to chase, to check in, to make them feel important after they disappeared, but you didn't. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand you don't need to hold on to anything that isn't holding you back. You let go quietly, gracefully, completely. And that disarms people who thought they had emotional leverage. Because when you stop trying to be the exception to their patterns, you become the one who broke it. Real world example. The one who didn't flinch. You ever meet someone who didn't flinch when you pulled away? They didn't lash out. They didn't chase. They didn't post vague stories hoping you'd see. They just focused, evolved, radiated something you couldn't quite name, but couldn't stop thinking about. That's what we're talking about. That's you now. Let's be real. This isn't easy, especially if your emotions are still loud, if your ego still wants closure, if your inner child still wants to be chosen. But here's how you practice. Stop talking about them. Let their name die in your vocabulary. Stop checking their status. Curiosity is a leak in your emotional boundary. Start investing in projects that require deep presence. Build things that outlast your feelings. Return to your body. Move. Train. Breathe. Reclaim your nervous system. Reconnect with real community. Find people who don't drain you, but mirror your highest self, because healing isn't just silence. It's construction. You're not just moving on. You're building something no one can take credit for but you. Let's be brutally honest. They didn't forget you. They didn't move on clean. They're just not reaching out because they expected your energy to orbit them. Eventually. But you shocked them. You didn't orbit. You transcended. You became too quiet to provoke, too focused to distract, too elevated to reach. And that is what creates obsession. Not noise, not drama, but evolution in silence. Ask yourself this right now. If I fully embodied the person I want to become, the healed version, the clear version, the magnetic version, would they even recognize me anymore? If the answer is no, then you're on the right path. Because obsession isn't about them loving you. It's about you no longer needing them to prove you're worth loving. So here's the final piece. You didn't chase them. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't try to be unforgettable. But now they can't stop thinking about you. Why? Not because you shouted, not because you begged, not even because you glowed up. It's because your silence held up a mirror. And when they looked into it, they didn't see the version of you they discarded. They saw themselves and what they lost. Obsession isn't love. It's insecurity with nowhere to hide. Let's be clear, when someone becomes obsessed with you after you've stopped caring, that's not about you. That's about them finally facing the vacuum your presence used to fill. You didn't just leave. You took the peace, the insight, the challenge, the warmth, everything they didn't know how to value while they had it. And now they're left with echoes and questions they don't know how to answer. Because when you were around, they never had to think too deeply. But now they're replaying old messages. Now they're watching your nesh from a distance. Now they're noticing the space you once filled and realizing they can't recreate it. The Stoic revenge. No revenge. You know what the most haunting thing is? You didn't fight back. You didn't shade them online. You didn't write a sad poem and tag them on Instagram. You just healed. You stopped participating. You stopped explaining. You stopped hoping. And that's what breaks people. Not conflict, but irrelevance. When you become unavailable, Not out of spite, but out of sovereignty. That's when the story flips. They thought you'd wait. They thought you'd fold. They thought they'd always have access. But you became inaccessible in the most graceful way possible. That's Stoic power. Revenge is unnecessary when growth is loud enough. Modern Stoic wisdom. You are not the same person they let go. And this is important. They're not obsessed with who you are now. They're haunted by who you were, because they realize now that version of you is gone forever. The one who texted back fast, the one who over-explained, the one who excused red flags, the one who waited, who worried, who hoped. That version of you doesn't exist anymore. Now they're watching someone else, someone stronger, someone unavailable, someone magnetic, not for what you offer, but for who you refuse to become again. And they know they don't have access to this version. Not even a little. Let them sit in the silence. They'll try subtle things, a like, a vague story, a meme that just reminded them of you. But don't mistake that for care. It's not love, it's lack. They feel the vacuum. They feel your absence. They feel your evolution. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them feel what it's like when someone no longer needs closure, because they've already closed the door on the inside. How to respond when they come back, because many do. If they come back, and many will, you don't need to be cruel. You just need to be honest. I'm not that person anymore. I'm not emotionally available for this dynamic again. I've moved on with grace, and I intend to keep it that way. You don't have to ghost. You don't have to retaliate. You don't have to prove you've changed. You just have to be so deeply rooted in your peace that anything from the past feels like a version of reality you've already outgrown. Reflection. Who are you now? Ask yourself, who have I become in their absence? What did their rejection reveal about the parts of me that needed healing? And most importantly, what new story am I telling about my own worth? Because obsession isn't about what they feel. It's about who you are now and how clearly they see that they never knew you in the first place. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need them to admit anything. You just need to keep growing, keep building, keep becoming so self-possessed that even the idea of getting you back feels like an impossible dream. Let them miss you, let them overthink, let them imagine what it would have been like if they had simply treated you right when they had the chance. And you walk forward, without noise, without bitterness, without apology. Because the Stoic path isn't about getting people back. It's about getting yourself back and never losing that version again. Don't be the one they remember because you begged. Be the one they remember because you became someone they could never reach again.